All right, so if you haven't already, please make sure to sign in. If you don't have a phone, that's fine. At the end, you'll be able to sign in by manually writing down your name and information. For those of us watching at home, please make sure that you also have signed in. You're going to be going to the Socrative, which is, if you can't read the URL, it's just Socrative student, and you'll enter the student name of USF Pre-Health, USF Pre-Health. And then that'll ask you to just some basic sign-in information. That way we know that you are here. How is everyone? Dry? No. I know, we're not really either. But thank you for being here today. Those of you watching at home, thanks for watching at home. We will try to keep the presentation brief but quick, brief but informative. Can you tell that I want to go home? But it's really, really important information. We make these workshops mandatory for new pre-health students because we feel so strongly that you need to start preparing now. You do not want to come into our offices junior, senior year after being here at USF for 2, 3, 4 years, however long it's taking you, and then come to find out that you have not done what you need to be doing. And for those transfer students in the room, hopefully this information is not new. If it is, that's okay. Don't panic. We're still here for you, but we may have to do some adjustments and kind of look at what your individual timeline looks like. Before I go farther, my name is Lauren Albaum, and I work in the Division of Health Professions Advising. I have 2 other advisors here with me today who I will let them introduce themselves real quick.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren Karlak, and I'm primarily a psychology advisor, but I also work with psych students who are on a pre-health path.
Hello, I'm Renee Ford. I'm a first year advisor in the School of Natural Sciences and Mathematics, so I'll probably be seeing a lot of it.
So Renee and Lauren, you may see them around campus. The Division of Health Professions Advising is in the library. That's where myself, Dr. Melvin James, and Anthony Iannelli reside, whereas some of our certified advisors like Lauren and Renee and some others, you may see them across campus, but they're another great resource because keep in mind, there are 6,500 of you, and the official pre-health advisors, that means that's our only job, right? Lauren has psychology, Renee has first-year students. My only job is pre-health, which is great, but I am only one person, Dr. James is only one person, and there are 6,500 of you. Hence also why we think these workshops are so important, because much of this you will probably want to see us about, but now we're going to give it to you today. So I mentioned that we're with the Division of Health Professions Advising. We are an office solely dedicated to helping pre-health students gain matriculation to health profession programs. Those programs are on the next screen, which I'll talk about in a second, but we do all of the following to help you get there, right? We do one-on-one appointments, we do walk-ins, we do mock interviews, we do application reviews, we do planning from freshman year on, what that looks like for you individually. There is no such thing as one path. No such thing. Your path may look different than your path, which may look different from your path. There's no such thing as a best major. There's no such thing as one path. And so a lot of this is individual. This is also why things like Student Doctor Network are a great resource for maybe getting kind of a sense of things, but nobody should be dying on the cross based on an answer they got from Student Doctor Network, because that is one person's individual experience, right? It's a black and white answer. You don't know anything else about that student's application, what their journey was, right? You're looking at a tiny window in time. So we are here to help look at the big picture with you, what that looks like for you. And so the health professions that we advise for are all of the following. Not on this screen is also anesthesiology assistant, which we do advise for. And keep in mind, we do not advise for the College of Nursing. The reason why we don't is because if you're nursing, you're already in. Right? If any of you came to the pre-health session and orientation, I say the same thing there. You're already in. So congratulations, but we didn't really help you do anything. You're already nursing. So these are the following. All of these, you'll notice the common theme is that you aren't this now. You are not in medical school. You are not in dental school. You are not in physician assistant school. If you are in the wrong room. Congratulations, you've already made it. You can go home. And then all of you in this room want to get to these. You want to become a doctor. You want to become a dentist. You want to become a vet. Meaning you have to do a lot now over the next 2 to 5, 6, 7 years, however long it takes you, to be competitive for admission. None of these programs are begging students to apply. They all have 2 to 4 times the number of applicants than they do have seats. So you are here because you're trying to build an application that makes them pick you over everyone else. And there's a lot of things that go into that. I already mentioned who we are, so I'll kind of just quickly gloss over that. But again, in addition to Lauren Kerouac and Renee, who've already introduced themselves, we also have Anthony Iannelli and Mary Cuthbertson as well, who are academic advisors who are able to see pre-health students as well. Many of you may know this, but many of you won't, which is why I will start with the basics of a pre-health journey. If you are a pre-health student, meaning you're here in this room, meaning you want to get into a school, you have to finish an undergraduate degree. You need to get a good GPA, you need to have great test scores, you need to have great extracurricular experiences, you need to have icing on the cake, which we'll talk about. You need to have competencies, you need to have all of that wrapped into one before you get to the health profession program, right? You're trying to get into that health profession program. For many of you in the room, inevitably you will be wanting medical school because that is just it's the number one priority for most students. Most students, when I ask them, what do you want to be? They say a surgeon or a radiologist or an oncologist or some very, very specific type of specialty, which is awesome, wonderful. We hope that you get there, and we will try to give you the tools to get at least to step 1, which is medical school, right? Everyone will start at the basic level. If you want to be an orthodontist, you first have to go to dental school. If you want to be a radiologist, you first have to get to medical school. So just be sure that you recognize, right, that you're starting as an undergraduate, getting a degree, then going to attempt to get into the health profession program, med school, dental school, vet school, then you would do a residency or specialty. These are steps along the way that may take a long, long time, right? For example, for my pre-med students, you're going to do 4 or more years of an undergraduate degree before you do 4 years of medical school before you get into residency, which is where you would specialize. Right? So if you're a new freshman right now, you're probably staring down the barrel of 8 years before you ever start to specialize in any radiology practice, even if that's what you want to be, right? This is a long, long journey. So know that it's undergrad, then the health profession program, then the residency or specialty. And for some of you who want some really, really, really specific and really, really competitive specialties, you may end up after that even going into something called a fellowship after residency for another 1 to 2 years, all before you get to the career, right? So it depends on what the career is, but know that this is a process. This isn't, you're not necessarily going to graduate USF and become, you know, a neonatal something, 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 right? There's going to be many other steps after that. And the big thing, the big reason why you're here, the big reason why we love to make sure that we talk to you as soon as you get in is because this takes, as I mentioned, a long time, generally 2 to 3 years to build a competitive application. So that means, again, if you come in my office senior year and you say, now I want to be, I have just now decided, I have woken up from this dream I had, and now I have to be a blank. Great, is what I'm going to say. That is so wonderful. We're here to help you. It's probably going to be 2 to 3 years before you have built a competitive application. And you will say, but I am a senior. I am supposed to graduate in 9 months. And I will say, great, you will graduate in 9 months if that is when your degree is finished. but it will probably be 2 to 3 years before you are competitive, right? Because of all the things we're going to talk about here in a second about what is competitive. So you want to start doing these things as soon as possible so you aren't that senior who comes in my office and says, I'm about to graduate, but I have not started shadowing at all. Because then I'm probably going to say what? It's going to be 2 to 3 years. Probably. Okay. So what is a competitive applicant? Again, some of you who are at the orientation presentations, we go a lot more, much more in depth in this presentation today. I split them up just for the sake of ease into must-haves and then extras. But don't get me wrong, pretty much all of these are must-haves, okay? But I will dissect them in those ways. Must-haves, right? It would not be smart to apply to a health profession program if you did not have a competitive GPA. Pretty straightforward. It would not be smart to apply if you did not have a strong entrance exam score. It would not be smart to apply if you had no healthcare exposure, right? Some of you are thinking, well, no duh. But I kid you not, the number of people who come to my office saying they're applying without those things, right? You must have those. You will almost inevitably not even be reviewed without those 3 by a health profession program, right? But keep in mind, you can apply at any time. You could have none of those things, and the system will let you submit an application. But your chances of being reviewed without at least those things are slim to none, right? You need to have a good GPA test scores and healthcare experiences. But thousands and thousands and thousands of applicants will have a good GPA, a good test score, and lots of healthcare experience. Thousands. For most med schools, I use med school a lot in examples only because our statistics are showing us that most of you want medical school. But these examples I give tend to ring true for every health profession program, but maybe on different scales. But for medical school, there's on average 6,000 to 7,000 applicants per school. Of that, generally, 3,000 to 4,000 are going to have a good GPA, good test scores, and good healthcare experience. 3,000 to 4,000. So how do they pick you then? Right? If that's all you have, it's probably not enough. So that's where all of the extras come in, right? So what are the qualities, what are the skills that you have? And those are going to vary from person to person. I get a lot of times in the office, well, should I be this? Or should I do this? Or should I do this? And I usually say, I don't know, should you? And I'm not meaning that because I don't understand what it means to be competitive. But those extras need to be something that you believe is going to make you competitive based on knowing yourself. So if you don't love community service, well, we'll maybe have a talk about that because you maybe want to at least have some type of community service and humanism in your application. But maybe then you need to focus a little bit more in an area that is, because anything you do, I'm going to ask you why it made you a better applicant. These applications are going to go so much further than surface level. Everything sounds good. Everything looks good. You got to tell me why it mattered. Why, what you did, what you learned, what skills you acquired based on that experience that are going to translate to being a great healthcare professional, right? If you say, I did cancer research, I'm going to say, great, what did you learn? Why did it matter? And if you say, well, because I did cancer research, I'm going to say, why did it matter? What did you learn? Why did doing cancer research help to make you, or why did doing that make you a better applicant? Why is it going to make you a better healthcare provider? Why will it make you a better physician or whatever it is that you're planning to be? Right? So, because everyone's going to have things that just look good on the surface. It's got to be much more than surface level by the time you apply. Everything must be able to be explained. And so if you're trying to make a case that you're a great leader, everyone in this room is going to do that in different ways, right? If someone wants to say that leadership is one of their top qualities, no two people are going to have the same exact leadership experiences, and that's great. But that's why there's not just one experience. It's not like I can say, well, go be an OTL because that's the best way to get leadership. Maybe that is for one person, but maybe getting leadership experience is better for another person in a different way. So keep that in mind. But start with the things that you are most interested in. Another hint that I put up there is the AAMC competencies. They have released a set of 15 competencies that all healthcare professionals who are entering into their programs should have. It was started by the AAMC for medical school, but all of them should have it. And all of the health profession programs are looking for them. There are things like cultural competence, oral communication, teamwork, reliability, adaptability, resiliency. How are you going to show those things? And those will be different across the board, but those are really good kind of buzzwords to start thinking about. How are you going to meet those competencies? GPA and prereqs, this one most people think of when they think of being competitive for health profession programs. But keep in mind, a 4.0 GPA when you only take 6 credits a semester does not hold the same weight as a 4.0 GPA if you were taking 16 credits a semester, right? Again, everything's more than surface level. They will see through everything. So there's no way to fool them, right? Again, another question like, well, how's the best way to like cheat the system? There's no cheating the system. They're not looking at the name of your degree. They're looking at your GPA, but they're looking at what constituted that GPA. Every single semester, how many credits did you take? What were the trends in the GPA when you took those semesters? If you retook classes to help make that GPA, and if you retook classes, did you go from a C to an A, or did you only go from a C to a B, right? Was your GPA really, really strong in the beginning and then it trailed off? That's not as good of a look. Or was it that you had a freshman semester where you spent a little bit too much time cheering for USF Bulls football and not enough time studying, and then your GPA went up? That's more of a trend that they'd like to see, right? Your GPA still might have suffered a little bit from freshman year, but there tend to be more forgiving of freshman year mistakes than if your GPA just starts trailing off at the end. And then keep in mind that those GPAs are really, really, really high. I cannot stress that enough. If you are a first-year student in this room, probably your number one job should be protecting your GPA in the beginning, because it is so much easier to keep a high GPA if you start out with a high GPA than it is to try to recreate it. It's never over. In our office, we will never tell you it is over, but we are candid in that if you come into our office as a junior and senior with a 2.7 or a 3.0, that is fine, but it is going to take a long time to bring that 2.7 or 3.0 with 100 credits earned up to a 3.5, 3.6, 3.7. Years to do that. Again, not over, but it will take years of not only years, but years of straight A's at that point. So you want to be really, really careful protecting your GPA when you start, because that's going to set you up to try to get those GPAs. They're also just extremely crazy high GPAs, right? For those of my transfer students in the room, you guys have been in courses, you know how hard it is to get 3.7s and keep 3.7s as the courses get harder and harder and harder. So those are just really high GPAs. So it's not the only thing by any means, but we are going to make sure that we reiterate that GPA is important, because it is a big factor. Healthcare experience. I would say this one has become, I don't want to say more important than the GPA, but at times I almost think that it is. If you shadow or have a mentor or have a parent or family member who's in healthcare, they may downplay this. because they have been out of the admissions game for how long? They applied at least 10 years ago at a minimum, probably, because if they're essentially in medical school, they took 4 years of med school, 3+ years of resident. I mean, they've got to be probably at least a decade away if they're a baby doctor. By baby doctor, I mean a young doctor. Right? So they have been out of the game of what it looks like to be admitted to medical school for a long time. And a decade ago, you didn't need this as much. And a lot of you may know people who've been out of the admissions game for much longer than 10 years. So be forewarned that I don't know of a medical school or dental school or vet school that will accept someone with no experience or with minimal experience. Because how do you know, or how do they know that you're, one, passionate about it, that you are going to be a good healthcare provider, that you even know what it looks like, that you want to be there? So you must have a wide variety of quality healthcare experiences before applying. For dental school, as an example, I don't like giving figures because then people go, oh, I'll just do that many and that'll be good. But I will, for the sake of it. For dental school, most dental schools, just dental experience, so dental shadowing, dental volunteering. By the time they apply, a lot of schools will have applicants or matriculants who have between 500 and 1,000 hours of dental experience. That's not leadership experience. That's not community service experience. That's dental experience. So again, this can take quite a long time, but it is crucially important. And it's not only crucially important that you do it, but that you reflect on it and you can tell me, anyone want to guess? Why does it matter? What did you learn? If I had a prize, I would give it to you. Because if you just tell me, well, I saw this and I saw this and I saw this, good. But why does it matter? What did you learn? Right? Or sometimes I get, well, Dr. So-and-so did this, and Dr. So-and-so did that, and Dr. So-and-so did this other thing. And I'm like, Dr. So-and-so sounds great. I know nothing about you. Right? I know nothing about who you're going to be, what you saw, experienced, how that impacted you, who you plan to be one day, how you plan to use what you've seen, how you can synthesize your strengths and with what you now know about the field. So super, super important. And I do want to mention how many, raise your hand if you're a PA, pre-PA, physician's assistant. Okay, so there's a couple in the room. You guys have the added benefit of needing direct patient care. If you work in healthcare, great. You're probably already getting it. If you don't work in healthcare, this can be difficult. Direct patient care is not shadowing, and it's not being a general volunteer, although you can get direct patient care as a volunteer. A great example is a volunteer EMT. Right? Direct patient care is where you are physically touching a patient generally, and you're responsible for their care. You direct their care in some way. So again, an EMT is definitely responsible for someone's care. They could volunteer their services and that would still count. But generally speaking, most volunteer positions are not going to be direct patient care unless you can tell me how you are directly responsible for care. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question is, how do you get direct patient care? It is tough. A lot of students will already come in with some type of certification or job. There are a few jobs you can get without a certification, such as some companies will hire medical assistants without it. You can challenge the CNA exam without having to take a certification, but I would say 98% of the time you're gonna have to get some type of certification, which means you're probably going to community college or a technical college on your own time and on your own dime to get that certification, right? Again, if you can find a job where you are directly responsible for someone's care without a certification, great, more power to you. But most likely you're gonna need some type of certification to get that, and you're then going to have to secure that job.
What about like a medical office assistant kind of person that takes the insurance and all that?
You are not responsible. The question was, what about like the front desk receptionist type who takes the insurance? You are not responsible for their care. That would be great. Healthcare experience, great. Indirect patient care, although I would still, if that's your only healthcare experience, it won't necessarily be all that they're looking for, but it's not direct patient care. You are not prescribing medicine. You are not taking vitals. You are not you're not responsible for them in any way. You're responsible for their money. But that's not what they mean. Yeah.
It's kind of like the question what she said before, working in a clinical setting, but it's more towards shadowing and clinical volunteering. If we're freshmen and we don't have any experience behind us, why would they want us?
So with shadowing and volunteering, why would they want you?
Yeah.
Good question. Why would they want you? Well, if I was being like kind of crass, I would say they don't, right? But what I mean by that is, look at everyone in this room. This is a fraction of the pre-health students. We had a third of every incoming student was pre-health this year. A third of every incoming student to the University of South Florida was pre-health. So all of those people are looking for shadowing and volunteering opportunities. All of the high schoolers are looking for, around here, are looking for shadowing and volunteering. HGC students are looking for it. University of Tampa students are looking for it. So there is a lot of competition. One of the things we put on our website is that the average student needs to outreach, meaning the responsibility is on you to call, visit, email, however you need to do it, to 20 to 40 places before they'll find someone who will let them shadow or volunteer. 20 to 40 places, because they aren't looking for you. Nobody is in their office going, man, I wish some student would follow me around. Like, they're not necessarily dying for that. Some of them are interested in it, definitely, because they want to give back. They want to ensure that future generations get that experience. But I don't know of any healthcare provider that's like dying to like have someone that they're like calling me saying, hey, do you have any people to come watch me? It doesn't happen. So you have to take the initiative. You have to take that responsibility of contacting, and it will take many, many attempts. Again, why we do this here, so that you know that you can leave here and start calling and contacting. If you have any networks, if you know anyone, if you have a doctor, if your doctor has a friend here in town, if your parents have a doctor here in town, start with who you know. It is much easier. It is less stressful to start with who you know. But if you don't know someone, then you are on the hunt. It's like if you're trying to get a job. You're on the hunt for a job. You're on the hunt for a shadowing job, essentially. You're calling, you're going in person, you are emailing, and you're not getting discouraged if you don't hear back, and you're continuing to do that. And we have on our website a whole page on shadowing and volunteering, which talks about what it is, what are some suggestions on how to find it. And so I encourage all of you to look at that as well. Yes?
The only shadowing that comes to one of them start freshman year or this high school?
Great question. Anything from high school is not going to count. Nothing from high school will count. Nor will you want it to count. Anyone want to guess why? It's a really good guess, because a lot of people did it. It's too old. You only get so many slots on your application to fill. For med school, for example, you get 15 slots for all work and activities, all honors, all awards, all work, all shadowing, volunteering, all research, all tutoring. Only 15 blanks. So if you're even wanting to put stuff from high school, we may need to have a discussion about if your application is ready, right? Because you should theoretically have more than 15 from college on that you could fill in those 15 blanks, since that has to cover all of those things that I mentioned, right? Yes.
So are most PA schools looking for both indirect and direct patient care?
Yes. So all health professions would require at least indirect, right? That shadowing, that volunteering, that exposure to healthcare. PA is going to also need direct patient care. Because, for example, you could be a phlebotomist getting great direct patient care, but if you don't work as a phlebotomist around PAs, how are you still going to be able to answer the question of, I know I want to be a PA because, right? I'm still going to say, okay, you need to do indirect shadowing then, or shadowing with a PA as well as being a phlebotomist, right? The phlebotomy is, or being a phlebotomist is to help you understand how to physically interact with patients, to get that one-on-one interaction and that comfort level, right? Because when you get to PA school, it's only 2 years. It's only 1 year of clinicals. They don't have time to teach you how to interact with a patient without already having worked on them and with them directly. But you still would need the indirect to show you what it's like to be a PA, right? And answer that question. All right, I'm gonna save some of the questions. Are these directly about the healthcare or experiences?
It's just like, if you started from this summer, the hours from this summer.
The question, if you started this summer, do they not count?
Yeah.
I mean, we're splitting hairs at that point because you're technically not in high school, but again, I hope that you don't ever have to ask that question by the time you get there, right? Because if you're asking me if you can include things from the summer before you started college, it's one of two reasons, and one's way better than the other. One, because it was an amazing experience, and it was like the best thing ever, and it was like just so impressive that you have to include it. Maybe we talk about it then. And then the other, which I don't like, which is you just don't have enough to fill it, so you're going all the way back to before college technically started. That's not necessarily a good look, right? Mm-hmm.
I'm just about something else that you said, not necessarily something right here. I was just wondering, you said we have 15 categories, like 15 plus to fill. Would it be like all shadowing experiences in one, or like shadowing with this doctor and shadowing here?
It depends. How you fill out that 15 is up to you. So if it's most of these experiences, that brings up a good point, should be more than a day, right? So you should not be like, I shadowed with Dr. So-and-so for 4 hours, period, right? These should be quality experiences over time. And so they should, if they are quality experiences over time, they're probably gonna be their own blank. If it was a day here, a day here, a day here, a day here, we may have to squish them together because otherwise you're gonna use up your 15 spots with like 4 days of shadowing, you know? Yeah.
So would it look better to be like enrolled in multiple activities within a certain amount of time, as in like shadowing and volunteering at the same time? Or would it be better to like concentrate on one and then allow some time to go to the other?
Good question. The question was, it better to be in many activities at once or to focus more on one? It really depends. So some students come in and they're like, I'm gonna take 18 credits and I'm gonna be working at Starbucks and I'm gonna shadow with this doctor and I'm gonna volunteer over here and I'm gonna do research and then I'm gonna study abroad at the end of the semester. And I'm like, great, wonderful. As long as you can get A's and do it all and not go crazy. Wonderful. But each of you is gonna be different, right? And so if that's not you, then don't try that, right? You need to make the best, most quality application that you can, knowing who you are, what you can handle, and I mean, part of this whole process is being super reflective. You have to have that emotional intelligence if you're going to be going to a health profession program. So they're going to want to see that you can manage that time and manage those responsibilities. So the more you can do while maintaining a quality profile, the better. But don't shoot yourself in the foot, right? Because when you tell a program, well, I only have a 3.0 because, end of story, there's no because, right? You have a 3.0, you shouldn't be applying yet, right? So there is no like I did it well, you know, because then I get, well, I was an OTL and I did this and I did this and I did this and I did this. Well, you shot yourself in the foot. Okay. Good questions, guys. We kind of already went into this a little bit, right? But how do I get it? Number one way is using your resources. I do want to mention, if your resources are mom and dad, brother, immediate family member, great, start with them. They can't be it, right? It just, then all you have is a family member who's probably writing your letters of recommendation. And a lot of schools aren't so keen on only family members because how do they know, one, you really did it and what you learned? So just keep that in mind. Definitely start with them. But if they are a healthcare professional, you probably have friends who are healthcare professionals, start trying to branch out. And then two, start cold calling, start emailing, start going in person. Make yourself a list, make yourself an Excel spreadsheet, whatever you have to do to start tracking those places that you've already called, that you're waiting on an answer from. We got Labor Day weekend coming up. You have a whole day off on Monday. Good luck. Remember, it may take you 20 to 40 attempts, maybe more, right? It's just average. And I did mention this about direct patient care, right? It generally requires a certification, not always, but generally. The rule of thumb is, are you physically touching patients, and are you directly responsible for their care? Directly responsible for their care. And then again, even after you get the certification, you then have to find a job. We are not a placement office. We will not place you in a shadowing opportunity. We will not place you in a volunteer opportunity. We will not place you in a job, right? There is an inherent value. You may not see it right now, but there's an inherent value in having to seek those opportunities out, find them, secure them, do well in them, reflect on them, and then write about it later, right? This is part of your journey, so you have to be kind of your own advocate for doing those things, showing that you have the determination, the passion, the communication skills to get that done. And then icing on the cake, that's what I call it, icing on the cake. Right, again, a bunch of people have GPAs in rigorous courses with great MCAT or DAT or PCAT or OAT or GRE, and they've got great healthcare experiences. There's still thousands of them that look like that, right? So you don't want to just be another applicant who just has that. So what else are you going to have, right? There's tons and tons and tons of different options. How you create that profile is up to you. But again, keep in mind, my question will always be, why did it matter? What did you learn? And there's got to be a meaningful answer behind that. All right, I'll let Lauren take over.
All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about entrance exams. So for all of the health professions programs that you guys are going to be looking at, there is going to be some sort of entrance exam associated with that. So for those of you who are interested in medical school or podiatry, you're going to be doing the MCAT. And if you can read it up there, it talks about the different areas, subsections of the exam. So the MCAT has changed in 2015. It used to be primarily science. And now there are additional competencies built into it. So there are going to be social science sections on the MCAT. There's going to be humanities, critical thinking. And so this is why on our website, and you guys can take a look at this, we have an MCAT guide with coursework to help prepare you for the MCAT. It's got more than science and math on there. It's got a lot of humanities, philosophy, psychology, sociology courses that we recommend that you take to help prepare you for this test. Dental school is going to require the DAT, optometry, the OAT, pharmacy school, PCAT, and then there are a lot of programs that also require the GRE, which is a widely used entrance exam for a variety of types of grad programs. So it's important to research the entrance exam that you are going to be needing to take for your health professions school and figure out what's on it. Make sure that you study and prepare. We generally recommend that students are going to be taking their entrance exam at least a year prior to when they would start the program. And so this is in line with when you're applying to the program. But then we also recommend that you start preparing about a year before you take the exam. So don't go into it cold turkey. Don't just think that you can wing it. It's going to be a waste of time and money. We find that students who prepare adequately are much better to get better scores on entrance exams. So when is the best time to apply? So here are some answers that we hear. Hopefully you guys aren't saying these, but when all of your friends are applying, so maybe you come in with your group of friends freshman year, you go through your 4 years, and you've got all your friends who are applying at the beginning of their senior year. That may not be the best time for you to apply. When mom and dad tell you to apply. When you reach the date that you thought you would originally apply. So if you've got a goal right now as a brand new freshman that you're going to apply in the summer of 2019, if you reach that date and you're not competitive and you're not ready to apply, don't apply. You may need to give yourself another year, and that's okay. So we always say that we recommend that you apply the summer that your application is competitive. And what that means is that you have already taken your required prerequisites, your GPA is strong, you've taken your entrance exam and gotten a competitive score, and you have all of those healthcare experiences, direct and indirect. Because what you do during your last year after you apply, while you're submitting secondary applications and waiting for interviews and all that stuff, schools aren't going to be looking at that. What goes on your application is what they're going to be looking at. So like I mentioned, applications should be submitted a year in advance of when you're going to be starting a program. And you're judged based on information on your application at the time that you apply. We have a question? Yes.
Do you have to like over the summer or can you apply like?
Some application windows are open until the beginning of the fall semester, but we would recommend that you don't wait until the last minute. So you want to check the application cycle for the actual year that you're applying so that you know when the application's open, when can you submit, and when do they finally close. Yes.
What if you wanna apply like maybe like when you graduate that summer, when you graduate, what will you do in that extra year that you're going?
That's a good question. Depends on you. I mean, because schools aren't necessarily going to be looking at what you're doing during that year off. Do you want to gain additional experiences in the field?
Would that matter? Like it would matter.
Once
but
you
would it
apply, they don't see anything else. Okay, so if you have a gap year, the gap year is for you, right? Because if you apply summer 2020, that would be for a fall 2021 start. And everything that happens fall 2020, spring 2021, summer 2021, you cannot update the application for most programs. And even the ones that say you can update the application, it's too late.
When do you hear like an answer back? Like when do you know you got it?
It depends. So most programs, like what Lauren said, right, most programs open in summer. You want to apply in summer. Anything past summer, with the exception of a few programs, is too late. We still have some students applying like right now. I mean, it's still kind of, okay, we're technically fall, but like we're at the end. Students are coming in right now saying if they're applying, I mean, this is the end. Like they need to be signed, sealed, and delivered right now, unless they're certain programs like podiatry, we could probably wait a little bit longer, or some other ones. But for the most part, most of them, this is it. Like this would be the end. Not obviously to start right now, to start a year from now. And once you get that application in, one, you can't really update it because that's it, you've submitted it. Everything you do after that, they don't see. And two, they can take as long as they want to get back to you. If they want to wait until March, April, May, they can. Until you hear a denial, you're still in the running. But if you don't hear a denial and they want to wait, they can wait. So that whole year after that, once you apply, that year you're waiting. You may know as early as October, depending on how early you submitted your application and how competitive you are. But if they want to make you wait till March, they can make you wait till March.
Each school is different, whether like college.
Every single school makes up their own prereqs, makes up their own timelines, makes up their own everything, right? Just like when you applied here to USF, USF could do completely different from UCF. They're all individual schools, they're all individual programs, they can do whatever they want. Within reason, but. Yes, all right.
Is there a limit of how many schools you can apply to?
No, but you pay per school. So how much money do you have? You know what I mean? But no. But at some point, if you look at the data, there's usually a point at which, if you're applying to more than that number, which generally falls between 10 and 15-ish, your acceptance rate starts to drop off. Because usually people applying to more than that tend to be reaching. Like they tend to be like, well, I don't think I'm gonna get in, so I'm gonna apply everywhere. And so they tend to not have as high of an acceptance rate. But technically, you can apply to as many, if you want to apply to 100, you can apply to 100 if you want to pay about $100 per school to apply. In the back.
So for each school that you apply, do they another school do they know when you apply to a bunch of schools?
It depends on what one you're applying. Like if you're applying to med school, versus dental school, it just depends. Most of them do not know, and if they do know, they only know how many you applied to, not where you applied to.
What if they know how many you applied to?
I don't know. I am not them. It just depends on how they feel about it, if they even know. They could. If they see you applied to 50 schools, maybe that could make them nervous. I don't know. It depends on everything else in combination with everything else. Yes?
I have a question. So I was looking at the Corsani College of Medicine page, and for the early admissions and regular empty admissions, they have the same requirements. So what benefit would I have other than my application is gonna be looked at first, then regular admissions? But other than that, do I have any other benefits? As in like applying early? Because I thought that we're gonna be more competitive, but.
So keep in mind that any school can write anything they want on their website, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what is the average of what gets in. Generally speaking, early admissions programs tend to pull students with higher scores than the average, than their regular pool. So generally speaking, early decision would be for students who are above average of the matriculants who know they want to go to one school. If you are above average and you're like, Morsani is it. This is all I've ever wanted to go to in my life. I will be crushed if I don't get in. And you're okay not applying anywhere else, then you would do early decision, and the benefit is that you would know by October. But they tend for early decision, not for Morsani, just in general for early decision, they tend to only accept students who are generally even higher than their average, right? Because if you're just average, then they don't need to make a decision right now. They can wait and see who else is out there, right? They're not going to marry the first person they go on a date with then, right? But if you're the supermodel who walks in, then maybe they'll marry you. You know what I mean? So they'll just wait. But if you are that supermodel, okay, well, and you're saying, I only will marry you forever and ever, maybe they'll take that chance. Because you're saying, I won't even apply anywhere else. You can't apply anywhere else. So, and if they accept you, you are bound to go to them. So and then the benefit on your end is that you knew by October. But if you aren't above average, I won't say it's not a good idea, but it may not be a good idea to apply. And if you're not going to be happy if that school accepts you, if you're going to be fear of missing out on the other schools, then you wouldn't want to do early decision.
So let's go ahead and move on because we have a couple more slides and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So these are kind of our takeaway messages. So if you guys are first year students, you're just now starting here at USF, this is what we recommend that you do now. Figure out what healthcare experiences you want to get and where do you want to start first. If you want to start with shadowing, if you want to start with volunteering, whatever that may be, start now. Start making those calls, sending those emails, getting connected, and figure out what you're going to do. Start building a strong GPA. Like Lauren mentioned earlier, protect your GPA because it can be difficult to raise it later on. Doesn't mean it can't happen, it's just more difficult. And we want to see that you're taking rigorous course loads. So like she mentioned before, 8 to 11 credit hours of science and math a semester. Your first semester might be a little bit different, but going forward, having a strong science math course load with at least 14 to 16 credit hours overall is going to show that you can handle the rigors of medical school. If you haven't already decided on a major, this is something to do during your first semester. Decide on the major, figure out what the prerequisites are going to be for that major, but also for your intended healthcare career. Start researching that information on schools' websites. And then begin researching the career. You may start shadowing and researching information, and you had your mind set on medical school, and once you get all that information, you talk to people, you realize, oh, maybe that's not right for me. Maybe I would rather go to PA school. So if you can figure that out early, it makes it much easier later on when you're applying. If you are a transfer student, so you want to figure out where you are along your pre-health journey. And we have a graphic that we'll show you in just a minute. But are you just starting? Have you been on this track since you started at community college? Or are you starting out brand new with the idea that you're going to go to medical school or some other health profession school? What does your path look like from here? Are you going to be ready to apply for your program in a year, or is it going to take you 2 to 3 years? What kind of experience do you have already? How many science, math prerequisites have you already completed? If you've already been involved in healthcare activities, great, continue doing that. See how you can continue to strengthen your profile. If you haven't started at all, you need to start now this semester. Make sure that you too are earning a high GPA and rigorous course loads, so the same rule applies, 14 to 16 hours overall, 8 to 11 hours of science or math. And if you're at that point where you're going to be applying pretty soon, you need to start studying for your entrance exam. So if you're applying next summer, you should be studying now and preparing for that. So if you have questions, you can reach a health professions advisor at our email address. We're also on eScheduler in the health professions area. We have a website, Facebook page. Is there the graphic that has the time?
I think we must have skipped it.
Oh, there we go. This is what I was talking about. So we have this on our website, but this is very helpful. I know the text is very small, but it kind of maps out a timeline, years 1, 2, 3, 4. And the important thing to recognize is that this doesn't necessarily correspond with freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. It could, if you are a first-year student starting right off the bat with all of these things in the first column. But for many people, their timeline is a little bit altered. And so that means maybe taking a gap year so that they can catch up because they didn't start out with their healthcare experiences, their science and math prereqs their first year. And so for transfer students in particular, if you haven't been doing these things since your first year at your community college, you may be starting at year 1 of preparation even though you're a junior. And that's okay. It just might mean your path is going to look a little bit different. And one other thing to point out, we've touched on this a couple times, at the end of year 3 is when we recommend that you're taking your entrance exams and applying to your health professional school. So then year 4 is for you, finish up your degree, go travel, whatever happens to be on your plate during that 4th year. So I think we went through everything. Does anyone have any other questions? I know there was a few hands. Yes.
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 The sign-in, I can get it on my phone, so can I just give you a piece of paper?
We have there's gonna be a sign-in sheet at the back. Just make sure that you handwrite your information before you leave. Yeah, so for anyone who came in late and wasn't able to do the electronic sign-in, just make sure that you sign that page. Yes.
I'm not sure if this is like inappropriate or not, but I heard a lot of like, because I want to be a vet, I heard a lot of vets since vet school's so hard to get into. I heard a lot of vets like go out of the country sometimes, or out of state, things like that. Would that be a good idea?
If that's a good fit for you, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing that says you have to stay in Florida and go to UF for vet school. If it's a good program and it's a good fit, certainly.
Yes, we have way more students at Ross and St. George's than we do at UF. UF, we tend to get 2 students in a year to vet school, dose. If for, to put that in perspective, at Ross and St. George, we on average have 10 to 15 there each year.
Yes, to the back.
For those previous schools in Ross, do you have to get some kind of licensure to work at the
Not for Ross and St. George's, no, they are accredited by the ABMC, the American Veterinary Board, so no, not for those. Now, if you go to one that we've never heard of, we will only recommend certain Caribbean medical schools, the ones that will accept federal financial aid and that are accredited to teach the American curriculum and therefore be able to bring students back. But they will be more expensive.
Yes.
Like, so you said there was the schools, I was saying, like, I know that they, like, programs are like, so, is it like discount country or is it less?
So when we say financial aid for health profession programs, and it's a great question, we mean loans. That is the only thing, that there is no such thing. Unless you are a Rhodes Scholar, unless you get a national, like, the Office of National Scholarships, where they give out like a handful of those scholarships a year to the country, unless you're one of those, there's really not scholarships for health profession programs. You may have like teeny tiny scholarships, or you may get a big scholarship. You may get $10,000. The program may be $70,000 a year. So when I say aid, I'm really mainly meaning loans. The average healthcare medical school student will have almost $200,000 in student loans by the time they graduate. So you'll have loans. Unless you have a very wealthy family member who wants to pay for it, you do a HPSP scholarship from the military, or you are a national scholarship winner like a Rhodes Scholar, or you, well, in this way you'd still have loans. You'd have loans, but then you could pay them off the end if you did some type of public service job at the end, they'll usually give you some money to pay towards your loans. But you'll have loans unless you pretty much have a wealthy family member, military, or happen to be like a Rhodes Scholar. And so there are some Caribbean med schools that are eligible to receive federal aid, meaning federal loans.
Yes. Is there like a set number of times you take your entrance exam?
It depends on which one. Like the DAT there is. The MCAT there is not. GRE there is not. But keep in mind, you should not take your entrance exam until you're ready to take it. Meaning if you are not scoring the score that you hope to get in multiple practice exams, do not take the exam. The chance that you will go in and score higher is slim to none. Right? So if you are not scoring at least the score you want, if not higher than what you want, there is no reason to go chance the exam. Right? You should be preparing to only have to take it once. And then that way, if something happens, if heaven forbid you're sick, if heaven forbid you get a panic attack, you have the ability to then go in and take it again, knowing that you'll be better the second time. Not, let me see how I get. Oh, that wasn't great. Now I'm going to take it for real. Oh, I had a panic attack. That wasn't great. And now you're on like third, fourth. I mean, you really don't want to be taking it more than once if you can handle it. It's expensive. It's emotionally draining. And mentally draining, and every school will see every attempt. So you really don't want to be explaining away a 12 DAT score and then trying to be like, well, I was just trying it.
So, like, to be acceptable then?
Anything, I mean, anything could be, like, I mean, you're like asking like a question like this when like I'm looking at this, like all of your applications. So, I mean, if you have 2 poor attempts, that's different than 1 okay attempt and 1 great attempt. I mean, like, so what are the factors of the 2 attempts? You know what I mean? But yes, you can have 2 attempts, and that's fine. I prefer it only be 1. But if it's 2, it's by no means the end of the world.
For students that take a gap year, I've heard that a lot of the times once they get through like the 2 application processes in the interview, they ask a lot about what you're doing for your gap year.
And yeah, that's very true. I mean, if you're taking time off after school, you want to make sure that you're spending that time wisely. If you are working retail and doing nothing else, just think about how that might look to an admissions committee. And so you want to make sure that if you're taking that time off, that you're using it and spending it wisely, definitely.
So like continue like some of the clinical experiences that like you started with.
Yeah, continue with some of those experiences so that you can kind of increase the length of time that you've been at them. And then if you have time to pick up additional experiences and it boost your profile in that sense, definitely. Any other questions? No? All right, so just again, if you did not sign in electronically, make sure you do that before you leave. And we'll stick around for a few minutes. Thank you. Sorry, I'm like asking your questions. Because I'm like, what's the question? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's like fine.